So thank you all for joining us this evening, and everybody on YouTube and people here on Zoom. Um, for tonight, does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've been talking about thus far? We're on chapter 24 right now, but if you have questions about something before this, would be okay. Okay, fine. Then, just as a quick review of this particular chapter, that we're talking about the first week, the second week, the third week, and we've been talking about the fourth week of the Buddha's the thus gone one, his awakening, his liberation, his enlightenment. So we got to hear about the what it is, the why it is, and the how it is. We talked about the 36 courses of action that the thus gone one took to be able to maintain, attain and maintain liberation. And he listed 10 prophecies, 10 things that will come up. Yes.
The 36 course of action, I tried to look that up online. I couldn't really find anything about it. Do you have a resource that you could share?
Well, it's right here in the book. If you
I
look
mean,
for,
beyond, are you just talking about what's in the glossary?
no, I'm looking at if you look at from
I know
verse.
where you found it, and I know where you read, but I was wondering what the other source is. Is there another source that
Not
talks
as far
about
as I
that?
know. Not as
Okay.
far as I
All right.
know.
Just my
If
misunderstanding.
you look at 24.35, it says, um, "Here at the center of the earth, I cut through the entire snare of 36 courses of action with the powerful sword of insight, then burned it up with the fire of wisdom." So here
Right.
he calls it that. You know, no, I haven't seen another reference to it anywhere else, but it's here in this sutra. Does that, what does that mean to you? Does that interfere with understanding or something?
Now, sometimes you can go deeper into some things if it relates to something else, and there's, some other sutra or some other teaching, and there's other commentaries. So I'm just wondering if there's any other background to that beyond what was said in the sutra.
Okay. So, so it was in this sutra, in this part of in the fourth week, that Mara comes into the picture again, and who says that he's defeated, that the thus gone one is beyond anything, is gone beyond anything that Mara can conjure up, can bring to interfere with the enlightenment, the awakenment of the thus gone one. And then his three daughters come up and say, well, maybe we can entice him further. And they do not succeed at that. And Mara then tells them that they can go to the Buddha, they can confess what their misdeeds, and that he will forgive them. So this was really where we left it off at the end of the fourth week. So now we begin at 24.111 at that point here. And this is where he, let me see if I'm right. Wait a minute, just a moment. Nope, I'm sorry. Sorry. No, we stopped at 24.88. So we're going to stop this reading at 111 tonight, and then continue on if we have time. So with 24.89 begins the fifth week, and then continues on to the sixth week of the thus gone one. So why don't we do this? Read it in a little bit of sections. So If Brendan, if you will read from 24.89, and you will read all the way to um, 24.94. So it's not very much. It's just the fifth week and the sixth week. And then we'll talk about that. Then we'll go to the next part, which is the seventh week, and we'll all have a little bit more of a chance to read. But okay, so Brendan, when you're ready, if you'll read those sections.
Monks, during the fifth week, the thus gone one dwelt in the domain of the Naga king Musalinda. Since the weather that week was intemperate, the Naga king Musalinda worried that the Blessed One's body would be harmed by the cold and the wind. Came out of his abode, coiled his body around that of the thus gone one 7 times, and shielded him with his hoods. From the east as well, several more Naga kings arrived. Worried that the cold and wind would harm the Blessed One's body, they coiled their bodies 7 times around the body of the thus gone one, and shielded him with their hoods. Just like the Naga kings from the east, Naga kings from the south, west, and north also came, worried that the cold and wind might harm the thus gone one's body. They too coiled their bodies around the thus gone one's body 7 times, and shielded him with their hoods. That pile of Naga kings loomed at a height like that of Meru, king of mountains. Those Naga kings had never before known such bliss as during these 7 days and 7 nights, because of being close to the thus gone one's body. When 7 days had passed, the Naga kings understood that the bad weather had let up, and so they unfurled their bodies from the thus gone one's body. They then bowed their heads at the feet of the thus gone one, circumambulated him 3 times, and returned to their respective homes. The Naga king Musalinda also bowed his head to the feet of the thus gone one, circumambulated him 3 times, and then set out for his domain. During the 6th week, the thus gone one proceeded from the Naga king Musalinda's domain to a banyan tree of a goat herder. On the way, on the bank of the Naranjana River, between the Naga king Musalinda's domain and the goat herder's banyan tree, the thus gone one was spotted by some Karakas, Parivarjakas, Vradisvrakas, Gautamas, Nigranthas, Ajivikas, and others as well. They asked him, Blessed One, did Gautama fare happily during the unseasonable 7-day storm? Monks, at that time, the thus gone one spoke these meaningful words. Happy is the solitude of the contented one, who has heard the Dharma and can see. Happy is the abstention from injury in this world of the one restrained toward living beings. Happy is the freedom from desire that transcends evil. Happy is the subjugation of selfishness and pride. These are indeed the supreme forms of happiness. Monks, seeing the world ablaze with birth, old age, sickness, death, anguish, lamentation, suffering, discontent, and strife, the thus gone one next uttered this meaningful verse. This world is tormented by sounds, sensations, tastes, forms, and smells, even while frightened of existence. Due to craving after existence, beings continue to pursue existence.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this 5th week was this incredible vision of these nagas, and you can look at the definition of nagas in the glossary, and they are subterranean beings who may be dharma protectors, and they may, if provoked, they may be able to create a retribution against those who provoke them. So they're not enlightened beings, but they are beings who are on a path, and they recognize the power of being awakened. They recognize the power of the thus gone one. So they are these Dharma protectors who, from the 4 directions of the earth, protect the thus gone one against this inclement period of weather and so on. So that's the 5th week. There's not a lot more detail about that. But then after that, during the 6th week, the thus gone one is able to leave, or he's able to move about, and he's in between the river and the banyan tree. The banyan tree is another word, was the fig tree, was the banyan tree, was the tree of enlightenment that he sat underneath to attain enlightenment. So he's in between that and this river where he just came from the Nagas protecting him and so on. And the question is, are they happy? Is he happy? And he gives these four happy qualifications of what it is to be happy. That there's a solitude of the contented one, that there's a comfortable body. He's happy that there's a freedom from desire. He's happy that there is a subjugation of confusion, of evil, and that these four happinesses are what is a transcendence of the world's sufferings. So the world's sufferings are here in 24.94, and he's talking about birth, old age, sickness, and death, and so on like that. And he says, this world is tormented by sounds, sensations, taste, forms, and smells, even while frightened of existence. Due to craving after existence, beings continue to pursue existence. So even though beings may be aware of what it is that's causing their suffering, they still continue to pursue that existence and so on. And this goes to, when we talk about in the samadhi, and we're going to talk about that more next time, but there's the question of what the skandhas are, the heaps of what it is to be a human being, and then the realms in which the human being is moving about and going through the vicissitudes of life and so on, and then the objects of that those realms. So here, these are the human aggregates and the sensory realms and their objects is what's being pointed out here. So being able to overcome them, being able to recognize them, and to be able to not annihilate them, but to be able to use them, to be able to harness them, leads to this happiness. That as a human being, to be able to maneuver through these, navigate their way through the vicissitudes of being a human being. So that's the 5th and the 6th week. Does anybody have any points, any questions or comments that you'd like to make about this?
Lance, I think that it's very succinct, obviously very compressed, like this section for week 5 and 6. However, I think it's very powerful. I think he again is repeating some of these themes about what you're having to deal with. And you just pointed out something I thought was very valuable. It's like you have to be so aware of what you're coming back into the body for. Like, you know that you're in the sufferfest, but you're addicted to the sufferfest. So just from like a practical 21st century, beyond the sutra written so long ago, it's like, that's a good thing to contemplate. Like, you're suffering, yet you keep coming back for it. So I love that you just pointed that out, because that's just a good practical way to say it.
Yeah, you remain a human being. It's a human being experience.
I also really liked,
Okay.
sorry, and also for 2494, I really liked that, just the part that's italicized, the world is tormented, the sounds, sensations, taste, forms, and smells, due to the cravings of existence. That's a very powerful, because I see that it's italicized, but I don't know if that means that that's a direct translation from what he said to someone. Actually, I don't even know that. Is that what that means when it's italicized like that, when it's inserted?
Well, in the sentences before that, it says that the thus gone one
Said
uttered
that.
the meaningful verse.
Yeah, okay, so that's a direct quotation then I guess. So that's just again, it's just so meaningful. It's its own contemplation because I can literally look at that and like thinking about all my like sugar craving, like all my stuff that it's like constantly in my brain, these things. So I just find it very powerful that it's just so consolidated. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, so for when we, it's easy for us to think that Buddha nature or Buddha enlightenment is somewhere outside of ourselves of being a human being, or we can't experience it and stabilize it as being a human being. But here the point is being made over and over again in all these different verses in this chapter in particular about it's a human experience, you know. Alex, you wanted to say something before.
Huh. I just wanted to make this interesting observation that we are about to enter the year of the snake, and here we started reading today about Nagas.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Yes, that's a good observation. So,
No,
so
but
the next, so this next year is the year of the snake. I didn't know that. I hadn't
yeah.
looked at that. Well, very good. Well,
But if could someone clarify or enlighten me, what are those Karakas, Pavivrakshakas, Brajat? Are these different like tribes or different? Um,
I tried to look them up. I looked them up as best I could, and I couldn't find a direct reference to what they are. So I have to, I kind of think that they are types of Nagas or something like that.
because maybe this was representative of different tribes. Because one of
Perhaps.
them is Gautama's,
Yes.
and the Buddha Gautama, that's probably his like clan or something.
Maybe so.
And actually, it says, "Blessed one, did Gautama fare happily during unreasonable?"
They asked him, Blessed One, did Gautama fare happily during the unseasonable 7-day storm? So they're asking him. He's the Blessed One.
Yeah. So that probably it looks like the representatives of different tribes that were wandering around and thinking.
Well, that's a good observation. And if you can dig it out, that'd be great. We'd love to hear a report on that.
Okay. But what do we make of this? I mean, should we be taking this Naga's appearance literally, or is it some metaphysical kind of poetic representation of energies that perhaps get under control or under influence by whoever is meditating, and somehow these energies are summoned when one is undergoing through, pointed meditation faced by elements. Interestingly, like a couple of days ago, I came across a YouTube short video when one of the like Siddhis in the Himalayas was sitting like on the slope of the high mountain, and the wind was blowing and snow was falling, and his old beard was frozen, and he had like naked shoulders, really, like there was not much that he was wearing, but his skin was appearing not pale. It was like kind of dark red skin. So somehow his circulation was there to protect. And you could see it, a live person that's sitting through the major snowstorm in the mountain.
Well, let's go back to your first point, your first question, and that was, is this to be taken literally, or is it, is it all a symbolic representation of a process that one goes through? So, does anybody have a comment on that? And maybe Kunga might have something to say about that.
I don't have anything to say about that.
Lance, I think it's just all figurative. I don't think it's literal.
Okay.
That's
Is that wishful thinking, or is that based on your personal understanding, your personal knowledge of it?
I'm thinking just of the reality is like the way things have been translated across time, where the use of language to communicate information, people used to just speak in sounds or draw things, right? So that these complex systems of language to communicate this wisdom of the world has evolved. And so I think it's just more of like sages and wise people and mystics went from like, sign language to all this to just really communicate the devil within, the Mara within is a snake. And it looks like a couple different ways. So I just think about communication language and how it can be really confusing. And I work with kids who have disabilities, right? So some of them don't talk, right? And so like I always think about communication, verbal and nonverbal, and how it gets misunderstood. Like someone says a word and then it means something else. So I'm interested in language in general, but that's my opinion because of just self-study and looking at different scriptures, like Hindu scriptures. And I think it all starts with sounds, like om. And then people get into these hallucinatory states when you're in deep meditation, and it's like I saw a snake. So that's my opinion.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. So, Alex, what do you think?
Well, I just want to say that maybe in a context, I think in our culture we think snake is something to be scared of and evil, just because of the Christian mythology, I would say, lore. But I think in India, in the East, like a lot of nagas or dragons, they are very benevolent beings. They are auspicious. It's good to have them around. So, so this is something that Buddha not supposed to be scared, but kind of like appreciate in a way, and feel lucky and like uplifted that they can come for his protection. And I think the East West is also, I mean, it should not really also be taken really literally. It's kind of aspect of our own consciousness, so of our own like nature. There is that side of our nature and this side of our nature, and at least 4 directions. So I think it's just saying that the Buddha felt protected on all of his aspects, all of his sides, so that the cold or the elements could not approach him or hurt him from any side of his body. And that's what one may expect as like a byproduct of realization, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
That
Does
some of
anybody
these
else have a comment about it?
lower elemental forms, they will naturally come under your service or your control.
Okay. Anybody else have a thought about it?
Yeah, I'll weigh in a little bit. So my natural bias is skepticism, and I respect the scientific method, as I'm sure Alex does as well. and I respect the historical method because that's my academic training is as a historian. So I really kind of identify with what Zara was saying. On the other hand, there are many amazing things, and there's a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction writer. He says, "The universe is not only stranger than we imagine, but stranger than we can imagine." So I'm willing to accept that there's things I don't know. And so I guess when it comes to the more fantastic things that seem, in a sacred text like what we're reading right now, I'm kind of like Fox Mulder, right, from the X-Files. I want to believe, right? That's kind of where I am, I suppose, would be the best way to put it. So I don't know, but I think that the Buddha is the greatest philosopher that ever lived. I continue to be amazed. I've learned that if you chant in Sanskrit or in Tibetan, as one TED Talk person talked about, he was talking about Sanskrit, all the benefits that come to you psychologically if you do that. People don't realize that. So, I guess the short answer is I don't know, but hopefully that was some helpful information on my perspective. Thank you.
Hey, Brendan, you just mentioned a TED Talk about the sounds or listen to the vibrational sounds. Could you
Yes.
send that to me either in the chat or WhatsApp?
So it's been a while since I saw it and I didn't save it, but I bet I can find it and I will
Okay.
send it to you if I can find it. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with everybody in the respect that there's a lot that we don't know, and so we can take everything at face value and see the spirituality of it, to see the symbology of it at the very least. If it proves out at some point to be real, or what we call real, beyond our comprehension as ordinary human beings, well, then so be it. But until then, I will have respect for it and look at it symbolically and see how it is that it affects me or I affect it or something like that. That's kind of how I look at it too. So I think it's interesting that in the fifth week he was directly involved with the Nagas saving him, protecting him. And the Nagas are these subterranean creatures, who do not have any kind of the sophistication or the intelligence, but yet they have the ability to be able to, coil around the dusk gone one and keep him warm and keep him protected, and they realize that, and they are able to do that and want to do that, and they're happy to do that. And then at the end of that week, then he's leaving that site and moving away towards the banyan tree. And then, my interpretation is that some of these Nagas ask him, well, did this make you happy? How do you feel about that? And then he goes and then he recites these four happinesses that he was able to articulate as a result of being protected, that this made him happy. This was part of his ongoing realizations as an enlightened being, as an awakened being, and so on. So things are still happening as a human being, and we're processing it and seeing how it all fits in. Because in phenomenal nature, all this is the display of the absolute nature, which to us is non-conceptual, but to an enlightened being, it all makes perfect sense, we could say. So anyway, that's how I think of it.
Lance, well, I'm just curious what this means to you from a practical perspective, 2492. Happy is the solitude of the contented one.
Yes.
What is that?
And what's the next line say? In the next two lines.
Who has heard the Dharma and can see.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like you're just happy, like you're happy with quietude or stillness? Is that what that means?
Well, I would say so. Yeah, that's how I interpret it. Happy is the solitude of the contented one who has heard the Dharma and can see how the Dharma works. And then happy is the abstention from injury in this world of the one restrained from living beings. So that's that's another part of the verse. So the first one is those two lines that you were just talking about. So yeah, so I think it's recognizing the Dharma and recognizing how the Dharma works within this phenomenal nature and the solitude of being contented within that.
That makes sense. I get, okay, that makes sense. And then happy is to abstain from injury in this world of the ones restrained towards living beings. Does that mean your ability to recognize other people's ego stuff and then making a choice to abstain from getting involved in it?
Well, I think the physical aspect, the abstention from misery in this world, intellectual injury or physical injury, but I think mostly physical injury, and of the one restrained towards living beings, not to try and manipulate or to tie up, manipulate in an intellectual way or physically tie them up in some way to restrain them. So happy is that not to engage in that, is the abstention from injury in this world. So not, so not to be, to be a kind person. Does that make sense?
Well, I read it first one way, and and then I started thinking about it from a point of compassion, where the second line where it's restrained towards living beings, and I think I interpret it as the ability to discern that other people are generally struggling with their own karma and to have compassion and do your best not to put flame or gasoline on when other people are holding their own heavy karma. Right? Like, so you recognize someone is dealing with their own samsaras and being able to discern it and not. That's how I'm reading it, right? Abstaining from injuring other people, because then you're going to injure yourself if you're harming other people knowingly. But I'll think about it more.
Well, it says restrained toward living beings. So, it comes to that point of going and seeing people, seeing the suffering that they're going through, having compassion for them, and even knowing the causes of that, but at the same time being restrained yourself from not engaging, in other words, to take on, responsibility for their karma, for what they have to live out and so on. If we're constantly getting involved with other people's lives, we can do it from a perspective of dharma. Here's a way, here's a code in which to live. But if we're actually imposing ourselves in every little vicissitude of their lives, then we're becoming attached to them and to their outcomes. So there comes a point of restraint, saying, okay, I'll talk to you about this, but don't expect me to solve your problems.
Yeah, I wonder how hard that is for everybody in this group, because I think we're all in helping professions. It's hard to discern that point of balance, right? And the Dharma versus, can you discern you're attached to that storyline that is one of your samskaras, that is actually one of your attachments, and it could be inadvertent pride.
Well, what do you think? I mean, you're a professional who works with people who have issues and so on. Do you have a line? Do you have a protection? Do you have a wall? Do you have a barrier where you say, I'm going to go up to this point, I'm going to do as much as I can to help, but there's a point that I can't help any further, and I have to respect that?
I've gotten better because I think we're all in the helping profession for a reason, right? It's part of our personal dharma, like we're drawn to it, and it's hard. It's been hard the more I've converted to a spiritual process of knowing I'm maybe harming someone inadvertently by enabling them not to live out their karma line, right? Versus I'm pre-programmed to follow a script, do whatever you can ethically, help this person, but to a point of actually they need to get burned a little bit by their karma. You're taking on and becoming negatively entangled, and that it's actually my pride very covertly saying, "Oh, you're a rescuer. Good, Zara, you're so sweet. You're so altruistic," but that's pride. Because then you're not, that's not compassion. I'll think about that. I don't know. My heart's gotten better, Lance, at feeling and knowing when to back off versus using my ego to make these very critical decisions. I'm like, no, no, my heart's telling me. So that's been something that's been happening slowly, knowing when to back off because I'm like, you're harming that person. They need to fall. Don't stop
Well, you
them.
become an enabler at some point, right?
And I'm a huge,
You think you're doing good, but you're enabling them to continue their bad behavior or whatever.
yeah, and that's I don't know if like I know Matt's in the help. I mean, like I know we all are, and I just wonder if it's hard to watch people suffer, but then I also have to ask myself that may be part of my individual journey is to work through that. That may be me up leveling, is like you said, when to discern when to help and not. That may be part of my dharma.
It's better to be wise like the sun.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else struggles with that, but it's hard for me when to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very
May
important
just
point. Yes.
may just throw in this observation that we seamlessly drifted from one verse into the other, because that's the next verse that's telling us about overcoming desires, subjugation, pride, and selfishness, and all that. So I mean, what you said is it makes sense, and yes, if you overcome pride and overcome even desire to help somebody, so they are happy, that's also a desire. And you want them to be happy no matter what, and then you happy too. But we have to, of course, get things flow, the natural way. Get the karma to play out, and get people to learn their own lesson.
So does that interfere with your happiness?
Well, I mean, if I see things are going the natural and like a positive way, I will be happy. But if there are some like obstacles, then I will be unhappy. I will want to help somebody to overcome obstacles. But there's only so much I can help, right? But I just want to say, I think the first verse is really like a little bit just simple that if when we in solitude, it's easier to be content and easier not to harm others just because you're all by yourself, and
Well, does the solitude come as a result of the Dharma?
no, I think it just
Or
saying,
does the solitude beget the Dharma?
no, I think the point is made here that in solitude it is easier to realize the Dharma and see the truth of the Dharma.
Then people who are in solitary confinement in penitentiaries should be thrilled.
Yeah, I think they should for a while until they realize the Dharma, and then
Well, you get my point.
yeah,
The solitude itself does not create the contentment.
right.
The solitude comes as a result of the contentment, which is a result of the embodiment of the Dharma. And the solitude is perfectly fine. Yes, Congo.
So there is a sutra called The Better Way to Live Alone. And it says, do not pursue the past, do not lose yourself in the future. Past no longer is, the future has not yet come. Looking deeply at life as it is in the very here and now, the practitioner dwells in stability and freedom. So the idea is that the solitude is a solitude of being in the present moment, not distracted by your ideas of the past or future.
Can you be in the middle of a stadium with 80,000 people and be in solitude?
Yeah, I think in that sense you could. The Buddha was criticizing another monk who was leaving the Sangha to be by himself, and he was telling his son Rahul that that's not what I mean by being alone. I don't mean you need to go off by yourself. I think you need to be alone and know what your thoughts are and be alone with your thoughts in the present moment, not be distracted.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, these are good questions. And that's the point of all this, is to ask these questions. I mean, these on the surface, they're very easy to answer and we can take it for granted. But when we start digging into it, we see that, you know, there's a gem of wisdom in each one of these things. What it is to be happy, really to be happy.
Yeah, I think it's saying that if we can conduct ourselves so we don't injure or so we restrain ourselves not to injure or harm other beings, we naturally get happier. We don't need to worry about bad karma, really. So, but that's not the end of it. Then this is like external thing that we do, but then there's also internal, which is connected to like our internal desires or pride or selflessness or selfishness, and we also need to work on that to be happy. So there are two things, and then about the other people. Well, this is the world that have lots of things going on, and lots of tastes and forms and smells and sensations, and it's not easy to stay happy in that kind of world. So
All right, so read the last two lines of dot 94. Even while frightened.
even
Read
while
that.
frightened of existence, due to craving after existence, beings continue to pursue existence.
So what's the
even though
point? So what's that? So what's the point of that?
Well, I think this is elaborating on the fact that it why there is such a cycle of samsara.
And so where are you in that cycle?
Well,
Where
right
is
now
the awakened one? Where is the
yeah,
awakened one in that circle? How close to the awakened one are you? Are you tied up in that circle?
yeah, we are still in the existence and we are frightened by it. But I mean, we can escape it, a little bit after death. But inside,
But that's a
we
temporary escape, isn't it?
temporary escape. We inside, if we don't overcome our attachment, our cravings, we'll have to come back. We're getting attracted to that existence. We have to overcome it so that we don't come back. Basically, attachments to all these sensations, sounds, forms, smell.
So what this begs is the question of what is it to be a human being? What are these realms in which a human being operates? And what are the objects of those realms that are part of the perpetuation of wanting this intoxication, this of being in this constant turmoil of ocean of samsara. So
I mean,
that begs the question.
no, I think that's natural part of human existence, so to speak.
But
And anything,
does it mean we are doomed to that existence?
oh, no, 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 no. No, because like once you realize what is the root, once you realize what is the root of this coming back, you can deal with that root so you don't come back.
So is that what the Dharma is about?
In fact, well, of course. Yeah, and that's I guess that's point of the point of Buddhist teaching. On all that.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or points you want to bring up regarding these 2 weeks that we were just talking about here, the fifth and the sixth week? Okay. Well, then let's go to the seventh week. And what do we have here? So here we've got, so Matt, we haven't heard from you yet. So why don't you, if you don't mind, if you'll start on 24.95 and read the rest of that page. And then Zara, if you'll read the next page after that, and please read slowly so we can all understand and hear the words enunciated. So Zara reads the next page. And then the page after that, if Kunga will read that, please. And then the following page down to 24.111, if Alex will read that. Okay?
Okay. Starting from 106, right?
Beg pardon? Yes, from 106 down to stop after 110.
Okay.
Okay, so Matt, when you're ready, please.
During the 7th week, the thus gone one sat at the trunk of a Bodhi tree. During that time, 2 learned and clever merchant brothers from the north, Trapusa and Balika, were traveling back from the south after having gained much profit with a caravan of 500 fully loaded carts carrying many kinds of merchandise. They had 2 bullocks called Sujata and Kirti. These 2 bulls had no fear of being waylaid, and thus they could be employed where no other bullocks would pass. Wherever there was a threat, they would stand as though fastened to stakes. They could not be goaded by a whip, but only by handfuls of lotus flowers or garlands of jasmine flowers. When this caravan of merchants approached the Bodhi tree, a goddess who lived in a forest of milk trees enchanted all the carriages, thus rendering them motionless. All the parts of the carriages, such as the harnesses and the rest, tore and split, and the wheels of the carriages sunk into the ground up to their axles. Even with everyone making great effort, the carts would move no further. Shocked and frightened, the members of the caravan thought, "Why have the carriages stopped here on this plain? What has happened?" They brought out the 2 bullocks, Sujata and Kirti, but they also would move no further, even though they were goaded with bunches of lotuses and garlands of jasmine. So the merchants thought, since even these 2 animals will not move, there certainly must be some threat up ahead. Thus they dispatched scouts on horseback. When the scouts returned, they reported, "There is no threat whatsoever." The goddesses then revealed her form and consoled the members of the caravan, saying, "Do not fear."
Now the 2 bullocks could lead the carts to where the thus gone one was. When they arrived, they saw the thus gone one blazing like the god of fire, well adorned with the 32 marks of a great being, shining with the splendor like the sun just after the dawn. Seeing him, the merchants were amazed and thought, "Is this Brahma who has come here? Or is this Sakra, lord of the gods? Or is it Vasvaravana? Or perhaps the sun or the moon? Or is it some mountain god or some river god?" Thus the Lama then revealed his saffron robes, and so the merchants said, This person in the saffron-colored robes is a renunciate, so he is no threat to us. They had, in fact, developed a devotion to him, and so they said among themselves, "It must be mealtime for this renunciate. What morsels do we have?" A few members of the caravan said, "There is honey, gruel, and stripped sugar cane." So carrying the honey, gruel, stripped sugar cane, they went to where the thus gone one was seated, bowed down their heads to his feet, circumambulated him 3 times, and stood to one side. Then they requested the thus gone one, "Please regard us with compassion and accept these alms." "Monks," the thus gone one then wondered, "it would not be appropriate for me to take these alms with my hands. What vessel did the previous perfect and complete awakened one use to accept alms?" Right then the answer dawned on him. Monks, knowing that it was time for the thus gone one to eat, at that very moment the 4 great kings appeared from the 4 directions, carrying 4 golden alms bowls. They offered them to the thus gone one, and sang to him, "Please regard us with compassion and accept these 4 golden alms bowls." Thinking, however, that those bowls were not appropriate for a monk, the thus gone one did not accept them. So the 4 kings came back with 4 alms bowls made of silver, 4 made of beryl, 4 made of quartz, 4 made of coral, 4 made of emerald, 4 made of every gem. They offered them to the thus gone one, but he declined, thinking that these were all inappropriate for a monk. Monks, the thus gone one then wondered what kind of alms bowls the previous thus gone ones had used to accept alms. He understood that it was alms bowls made of stone, and so it dawned on the thus gone one's mind. Then the Lalitavistara said to the 3 other great kings, "Friends, when the gods of the blue class gave us 4 stone alms bowls, we thought they were for our use. But a god of the blue realm called Varachana told us the following.
Listen, these alms bowls are not to be used. Preserve them. They will become honored as sacred objects. A victorious one called Shakyamuni will appear. Offer these alms bowls to him." Friends, the time has come now to offer a vessel to Shakyamuni. Paying homage with the melodious sounds of a song and cymbals, we will offer the begging bowls. He is a vessel made of dharma and is indestructible, while these vessels made of stone are destructible. He will be unable to accept another bowl. Let go so that he can accept them. Let's go so that he can accept them. Then the 4 kings, together with their kinfolk and retainers, went to the thus gone one, holding these alms bowls in their hands, and carrying flowers, incense, perfumes, garlands, and unguents, playing cymbals and gongs and singing songs. Having paid homage to the thus gone one, they filled the alms bowl with divine flowers and offered them to the thus gone one. Monks, the thus gone one then thought, "These 4 devoted great kings are giving me 4 stone alms bowls, but 4 are too many for me. Yet if I were to accept only one, the other 3 would be upset. So I will take all 4 alms bowls and transform them into one." Monks, the thus gone one then extended his right hand and spoke to the king Varasvana in verse. "Offer an alms bowl to the well gone one. You will become a vessel of the supreme vehicle. By offering an alms bowl to the likes of me, you will never be bereft of mindfulness and intelligence." Monks, the thus gone one then accepted the alms bowls from the great king Vasravana, regarding him with compassion. Having thus accepted it, he then spoke in verse to the great king Dhritarashtra. "Whoever gives an alms bowl to the thus gone one will never be bereft of mindfulness and insight, and will spend his time happily at ease until awakening to a state of cool repose."
Monks, the thus gone one then accepted the begging bowl from the great king Dhritarashtra, regarding him with compassion. Having accepted it, he spoke in a verse to the great king Virudhaka. "Give a pristine begging bowl to the thus gone one, pure in mind, and you will swiftly become pure in mind, worthy of veneration in the world." Monks, the thus gone one then accepted the alms bowl from the great king Virudhaka, regarding him with compassion. Having accepted it, he spoke to the great king Virupaksha in verse. Give the faultless intention and devotion, a faultless vessel to the thus gone one, who is faultless in discipline and conduct, and your merit of generosity will be faultless. Monks, the thus gone one then accepted the alms bowls from the great king Virupaksha, regarding him with compassion. When he had accepted it, he transformed all 4 alms bowls into one through the power of his wish, and then said this meaningful verse. Since in a previous existence I offered alms bowls, filling them with fruits and making them lovely, the 4 miraculous gods are now giving me these 4 well-formed alms bowls. On this topic it is said, this wise one, with insight into ultimate reality, gazed at the supreme tree of awakening for 7 nights. The earth trembled in 6 ways. And then this lion among men rose with the movement of a lion. Like the Lord of Elephant, he slowly walked about and eventually reached the trunk of the tree of liberation. Like Mount Meru, the sage sat there unshakable, absorbed in concentration and meditation.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on this? So at the beginning of the 7th week, this caravan is stopped in their tracks, literally, by the activity of this goddess. She's unnamed, this goddess, but who has the power to mire the bulls and the wheels of the carts and everything into this mud. And they wonder why. And she says to them, well, do not fear. Because why? That's the question. Why shouldn't they fear? Why were they mired? Why did she stop them in their tracks? What was the object here? Was there an object lesson? Was there some wisdom and some compassion that was in play here?
To me, it looks like this is kind of a lesson about generosity, and there is certain merits in practicing generosity, but it cannot be done haphazardly, I would say. It cannot be done in just sometimes we call it half-ass way. You want to be.
So who was the teacher in the midst of this?
So that's a good point. Who inspired them? How to present the offerings properly? Because I think it's saying a lot about how to present offerings, with what intention and what a state of mind that the offerings are presented, rather than just the offerings themselves.
So in 24.97, the thus gone one presents himself, but not as anything special. He's not regarding himself as anything special, right? But seeing him, the merchants were amazed and thought, is this Brahma who has become here, or is it Shakra, Lord of the gods? They couldn't see past the gods at this point. They didn't know of an awakened one. They didn't know of a Buddha. Or is it Vajrayana, who is the god of wealth, of health and wealth? Or perhaps the son of the moon.
Yes, because he looked like in regular yellow clothes, not fancy clothes. He looked like ordinary renunciate or something like that.
He was cloaked as an ordinary being, perhaps a holy being, but certainly not. They didn't recognize him as being the thus gone one at this point. But then he reveals his saffron robes. And so the merchant said, this person in saffron colored robes is a renunciate. So he is no threat to us. So then they say, it must be mealtime for this renunciate. We should make offerings to him. So then
they said, what morsels, what little pieces do we have to give some little bit of thing?
So then they go through this whole offering drama of how to offer this to him. And they offer it in great bowls that are made of jewels and so on, gold and things like that. And he rebuked them. He refused that. And then finally,
he mentioned something about the previous perfect and complete awakened ones. What is he talking about? Other saints or other Buddhas of previous kalpas or whatever? What does it mean?
Well, what do you think?
Well, I don't know much of the Hindu mythology. Is he talking about Maitreya or somebody? Or
well, he's defining it. If you look in the middle of 1.98, it says it would not be appropriate for me. The thus gone one is speaking. He says, the thus gone one then wondered, it would not be appropriate for me to take these alms with my hands. What vessel did the previous perfect and complete awakened ones use to accept it? So he's qualifying it right away by saying the awakened ones. There can be no other than the awakened ones, can be no other than what we call Buddha. Right? Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. Yeah, he is basically he couldn't say those kind of offerings are not suitable for to be given to a person like Das Ganwan.
So the gods might accept those things.
Yes.
But one who is transcendent of the gods and the true nature of what we call being awakened, of being Buddha, then has greater humility than the gods and says, oh, I'm not going to accept those.
Right. He hinted them that those kind of offerings should be presented in a very different way. Because these should not be regarded as regular offerings just to help somebody survive from, hunger or discomfort or something like that. This is giving them an opportunity to give those offerings with a much higher purpose, or which much more refined consequences, so to speak. So it's opportunity for them to generate good karma and good things for themselves.
But what about for himself? But what about for the awakened one himself? He was conscious of his humility. This was a meeting for the first time since he had attained enlightenment with these ordinary beings who are making offerings to him, and he's confronted with, how do I accept these offerings? Do I accept them as a god and accept all these, bejeweled items, or do I do it with greater humility? And he's thinking about, well, what did the previous Buddhas who came before, how did they accept these things?
Yeah. Yeah. And
when it comes to 24, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know what's in their mind. What do they know about previous gods and all that? But I think it's very striking to read that this sentence that's saying, please regard us with compassion and accept these 4 golden alms bowls. So it's not that this caravan and kings, they have compassion to the some renunciant and give him offerings, out of compassion, give him offerings. It's the other way around. It's the Das Gan one has compassion to those who are about to give. He showing his compassion to them by accepting this offering, because as we learn later, that kind of offering and acceptance will create great merit and great, not very good consequences to those who offer them. So it's basically turning this offering situation the other way around. That's what it seems that this is saying. And how does one do that? So then, there should be a different quality of that, I guess, both outside and inside, in terms of state of mind when presented.
So then 24.99, what does that say?
Monks, the Das Gan one then wondered what kind of alms bowls the previous Das Gan ones had used to accept the alms. So the Das then wondered. He understood that it was alms bowls made of stone, and so that thought dawned in the Das Gan one's mind.
So this is very primeval, I think. To think of this in terms of, what we consider to be creation, the universe and so on like that. And before any sophistication of this world came, things was just of stone. Things were just of the planets. Things were just of, comets and celestial bodies.
Well, I mean, but before that, they were trying to present all those offerings in very nice things of gold, of quartz, of beryl. And he said, no, 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 this is too fancy. This is not the point. The point of this offering is not to please somebody with the luxury of a sight or whatever. The bowl itself is just to hold it.
Well, the point may also be for him, for him to be able to say, well, what should my behavior be here?
Yeah.
He's a human being. He's an enlightened human being. He's an awakened human being. So he's using his awakened powers now to discern, what are the choices here? What's happened? And he's considering, well, what did the predecessors, what did the thus gone ones who came before him, what did they do? Let me not make a rash decision here. Let me think about this.
Yeah, and because he just overcome attachment to material things and also internal things, desires and all that. And then suddenly he's almost being trapped into a game to develop attachment to those nice things that happen to be, circle of samsara here.
So on the next page, that first paragraph of the 99th stanza. Now the king Ravana, he's one of the four great kings, and he's from the north. That doesn't make it a lot of. It doesn't make. It's not important right now, but he's the head of these gods, and he's saying that this blue class of it says the gods of the blue class gave us these 4 stone alms bowls, and we thought that they were for our use. But a god of the blue realm called Varanchana called us to the following. So Varanchana, what he represents of this blue realm is the primordial nature. The color blue invokes the primordial nature. So it's something beyond what these gods are normally thinking about or engaging in. And then what does he say in dot 100? Gunga, what does he say in dot 100?
Listen, these alms bowls are not to be used. Preserve them. They will become honored as sacred objects. The victorious one called Shakyamuni will appear. Offer these alms bowls to him.
All right, continue, please. Next one.
Friends, the time has now come to offer a vessel to Shakyamuni. Paying homage with the melodious sound of songs and cymbals, we will offer the begging bowls. Keep going.
Yeah.
He is a vessel made of dharma and is indestructible, while these vessels made of stone are destructible. He will be unable to accept another bowl. Let's go so that he can accept them.
Okay, continue, please.
Then the 4 kings, together with their kinfolk and retainers, went to the thus gone one, holding these alms bowls in their hands, and carrying flowers, incense, perfumes, garlands, and unguents, playing cymbals and gongs, and singing songs. Having paid homage to the thus gone one, they filled the alms bowl with divine flowers and offered them to the thus gone one. Monks, the thus gone one then thought, these 4 devoted great kings are giving me 4 stone alms bowls. But 4 are too many for me. Yet if I were to accept only one, the other 3 would be upset. So I will take all 4 alms bowls and transform them into one. Amongst the thus gone one then extended his right hand and spoke to the great king Vasarvana in verse. Offer an alms bowl to the well gone one. You will become a vessel of the supreme vehicle. By offering an alms bowl to the likes of me, you will never be bereft of mindfulness and intelligence.
Okay,
Amongst
so
the
hold it there. So hold it there. So now what is the thus gone one? He's going to say, well, these are all coming together as one bowl, and I'm going to respect that these gods are making these offerings, but I'm going to be compassionate with them. So, he's reached a point where the simplicity of the bowls, the humbleness of the bowls and so on is evident, and he's going to, out of compassion, accept them, but he's going to think of them as one bowl. Maybe one way to look at this, it occurs to me, is maybe thinking of this as a primordial, the world, the earth as a primordial stone. It's all the same thing. It's destructible, but he is indestructible. He is the embodiment of the indestructible nature, and so this is all just a symbolism. It's just a play on temporariness.
Yes. I think the point is like, what is the point of having many bowls if any of them can be destructive? Any of them can be broken down and fall apart. I mean, in terms of like thinking about timelessness, whether you have 4 bowls or 1, it doesn't really matter. What matters is there is some kind of offering. And then at the same time, I think he also points out there shouldn't be attachment to like accumulation, to store something. Like before, that was overcoming of like luxury, of what is being offered. And here he also overcoming attachment to like stocking it up. Maybe this starts too gross for this discussion, but to me it's kind of like one of the lessons, like it's if you can do with one thing, just we can be content with one thing, and it will be just as good as many things.
Yes, I think that's very good. Yes. And why would we need many things when all we need maybe is just one for this particular moment in time? So in the next verses, it says, and I'm jumping to 104. It says, you will become a vessel of the supreme vehicle. By offering alms bowls to the likes of me, you will never be bereft of mindfulness and intelligence. And then the next verse, he regards them with compassion, having thus accepted it. You will never be bereft. You will never be without that. And then in each one of these, he's regarding them with compassion as he accepts the bowls from these 4 great kings, and they'll be pure in mind, they'll be worthy of veneration, they'll be faultless in discipline and conduct. So you can read each one of these and slowly think about each one, and hopefully to instill within your own self that which is arising within the thus gone one is this great sense of humility. So here in 108, the quote, the verse that he says is, since in a previous existence I offered alms bowls, filling them with fruit and making them lovely, the four miraculous gods are now giving me these four well-formed alms bowls. So in other words, it's saying that, you know, the merit that he had accumulated from previous lives is now coming back to him. And he has to be worthy of that by accepting these and showing the compassion for those who don't understand what's really going on. But these four miraculous gods are now giving me these four well-formed alms bowls. So then, Konga, please read 109 and 110 again.
On this topic, it is said, this wise one with insight into ultimate reality gazed at the supreme tree of awakening for 7 nights. The earth trembled in 6 ways, and then this lion among men arose with the movement of a lion. Like the Lord of Elephants, he slowly walked about and eventually reached the trunk of the tree of liberation. Like Mount Meru, the sage sat there unshakable, absorbed in concentration and meditation.
Yeah, so this is summing this up. These are the 49 days. These are the 7 weeks of the Bodhisattva, who is now the thus gone one, who is just, he's going through this in his mind. All this is coming up in his mind. It's like Mount Meru, the sage, sat there unshakable, absorbed in concentration and meditation. So he's like the embodiment of all the phenomenal nature that has come before, all the, if you will, all the games that have been played through pride and ignorance and egotism and all those things, you know, has played out in his mind. And he has surpassed all of that, you know, and now he walks like a lion, you know, with great courage and strength, you know, like a kingly lion, and the Lord of the Elephants, you know, with great deliberation of intelligence. The elephants represent intelligence. He walked about and eventually reached the trunk of the tree of liberation. And he'd been sitting there the whole time. So this was like, if you will, maybe like an out-of-body experience or something like that. Maybe not stretching the point, but here at the last, it says he's been sitting there the whole time. Any comments or thoughts about that?
For me, starting at 24,109, it seems to be an insert of the previous story we had just read, told in a simpler, pared down manner. Like 24 through 1019, all the way to 24,116. It seems like the same story of the merchants coming to see the Buddha and having the same story of the Buddha after right of enlightenment up until the point where the merchants come and their carts sink in the mud. It's like that same story retold from a different sutra. I don't know, inserted. It's kind of strange to me. It reads kind of strange that way. Thank you.
No, I agree. It's like a root text just on the experience of the merchants. You know, it's like the summation of all that was going on in his mind. So Bernie, you came in, around 8 o'clock or so, and do you have any thoughts about any of this? Had you read this ahead of time?
Particular to add, except I remember the story. Got nothing to add except I remember the story of the Buddha being offered the begging bowls, but not in this detail. And I don't understand why these two merchants are in the story because that's not who Buddha got the begging bowls from, but I guess we'll find that out later.
Right, that comes in the next few pages.
But yeah, it's 7 weeks. He's been sitting there with no food, and so finally he gets a begging bowl so he can beg for food. But he had been uh, in the wilderness, a monk or a homeless person for 6 years, right before he became the Buddha. So he wasn't begging during those 6 years. How was he getting his food? Just what he could pick from the trees, I guess.
He's only eating one sesame seed.
Yeah,
But if
well,
they had
yeah,
like a little cup of them, he could have the whole year could have been the little cup.
but
Well, it wasn't expressed here, but in other stories, it was that the villagers, from time to time would come up and give him, some rice and some water and so on like that. But it
but
was all
I,
very meager.
yeah, but it wasn't enough that he needed a begging bowl. I guess he could hold it in his hand, I suppose. So yeah, not. I mean, this is pretty. I mean, it's not really that much doctrine in this part of the story, is there? So it's
All right.
interesting. It's interesting because it's the life of the Buddha, but it's not interesting from a doctrinal point of view, really.
Well, the story I've always known, and I've said many times, is that, during these 7 weeks, he paced about. He didn't know what to do. He was thinking about, what he had to do. He was being beseeched by his 5 friends and how to teach them and everything. And then finally, he makes his way to Varanasi, or rather to Sarnath, and he begins to teach them at the end of the 7 weeks. But here, that whole period of time, each one of those weeks are broken down as a um, as a coming to an understanding by the thus gone one, by the Buddha, of what it is to be the Buddha and how to behave.
Yeah, I think this is a good point, and and he's sort of like giving an example to future monks, um, like how to accept offerings, and reminding that these offerings is basically a fruition of their own karma. So it's naturally that they should be accepted, but they should be accepted not as oh, this is my karma and I deserve it and let it be so. But on the other hand, it should be accepted with compassion towards whoever is giving, a compassion in the words that with gladness it should be accepted, because not because of the object themselves that's being given, but because uh, the, whoever is giving it, they generated good karma for themselves, that they generate good causes for themselves. So the act of acceptance is the act of benevolence to them, although
Right,
they may not realize that.
right, exactly.
So it's a very, I mean, this give and take is happening on a very refined level, as opposed to just regular, here is like something to fulfill your need.
it's like an exchange, and to stretch the point, it's an exchange of energy.
Yeah.
They're trying to, the offerers are trying to offer this power, this food, whatever, to the thus gone one, and the thus gone one is accepting it for their benefit. He
Yeah.
doesn't need it.
Yeah. Yes, but he understands it's for their benefit, so he has compassion towards them. But
Right.
they're just thinking, oh, we just
And maybe
we
they're
just
doing it out of pride. Oh, I gave the monk, this great one, we gave him food and everything. We did a wonderful thing. Aren't we
yeah,
special?
right. Or yeah, or
And he's saying, well, give me the simplest and give me, I don't need any more than I can take right with me right now. I'm not going to start hoarding any of this.
right.
So I think this is very subtle teaching here.
Yeah, there are lots of levels of teaching here.
Yeah. So let me read just a little bit up to 24.117. It says, at that time, the two brothers, Trapusa and Balika, with their caravan of merchants and carriages filled with riches, reached a grove of sal trees in full bloom. Instantly, through the great sage's radiance, the wheels sunk into the earth up to their axles. Seeing such a situation, the merchant caravan was terrified. Carrying swords, arrows, and spears, they inquired who was dwelling in the forest like a deer. They saw the victorious one, who was like the sun in a cloudless sky, and whose face was like an autumn moon. Without his hostility or pride, they bowed down, wondering who he was, a deity from the sky. He is a Buddha acting for the welfare of the world. For 7 days and nights, this embodiment of compassion has not consumed food or drink. If you want to assuage your own afflictions, feed this cultivated body and mind. When they heard that sweet speech, they bowed down to the victorious one and circumambulated him. Pleased, they decided with their companions to feed the victorious one. So this is a recounting of their experience in this. So I think we'll stop here. If there's more conversation, we should have some more discussion. But to go on further is going to we're not going to be able to finish anything. So I think it'd be better to wait until next time, and then I think we can get through the rest of this chapter in the next session. But meanwhile, in this what I just read here. In 24.1113 or 113, it says, carrying swords, arrows, and spears, they inquired who was dwelling in the forest like a deer. They saw the victorious one who was like a sun in a cloudless sky and whose face was like an autumn moon. Without hostility or pride, they bowed down, wondering who he was. A deity said from the sky, he is a Buddha acting for the welfare of the world. So this is quite mysterious.
I mean, do we read it as basically a recap of the previous verses we just read in a couple pages above?
Well, what do you think?
Well, it looks like this. I don't know who are those two brothers, but oh yeah, the brothers are the same. The brothers are the merchant. Yeah, yeah, it's just a recap. And the deity is the goddess. The deity is that goddess who revealed, and I think it just adds a little bit to the story from maybe a somewhat summative perspective what has happened.
So was this an apparition, if you will? You know, that in the sections that we just read before, I think it said that the thus gone one stayed seated at the foot of the tree of enlightenment. He was staying there, and he's having this whole experience thinking about all this. But then these merchants, these brothers and their entourage and their caravan and everything are seeing it some other way. They're seeing this apparition out in the forest. And it reminds me of a story.
Mm.
And Bernie, are you still in earshot, Bernie? The story is something like this. Garchen Rinpoche. Is everybody familiar with Garchen Rinpoche? It's said that when Garchen Rinpoche was locked up in prison for those 20 years in Tibet during the time of the Cultural Revolution, and he was using that time as a retreat. He was in the in the huts with other monks and so on like that, and his teacher. He was there with his teacher, and Kempo. Oh, jeez, his name just went out of my head. Kempo. Not Kuno. It'll come to me in a minute. But anyway, his teacher was a Nyingma teacher. And Garchen Rinpoche was Drikung Kagyu. But he found this teacher who was like a Mahasiddha, was like a great being and so on. And so during the day, Garchen was having to do his chores, was having to do his work. But at night, he was doing meditation from the instructions that he was getting from the Kempo. Do you remember the Kempo's name, Bernie?
I'm looking it up right now.
Tempo Munsel?
No,
I was just
Munsell
looking at
was
that's not
no,
it.
Munsell was the one who took care of the Gom monastery after Garchen left. No, that's right. No, it was Kempo Munsell.
Tempo Manso, it's right. He says
Kempo Munsell.
who became
that's
a
right.
guru, right?
That's right. I've had to say his name for a long time, so I forgot it. Kempo Munsell. So anyway, so at night, Garchen was doing practice. And there were times when the guards, the Chinese guards, would see him out beyond the fence of the compound that he was in. And they would come rushing in. Oh, Garchen has escaped. He's escaped. And they would come to his bed, and he'd be sitting there in his bed. But they saw him out there in the forest, among the trees. So perhaps this little story that we're seeing here of the image, the apparition, if you will, of the Bodhisattva now, who's now awakened, is being seen in the forest, but meanwhile is still sitting at the foot of the banyan tree, of the meditation tree, of the Bodhi tree. Bernie, you have any comment on that?
Yeah, no, not really. I don't, not really up on the story of Garchen Rinpoche. I know he sometimes had to meditate lying down in his bed because the guards weren't happy with him meditating uh, just on his bed, sitting in the meditation posture. What happened later, I think, is that he got in a special section of the prison for sick people, and while he was in that section, he was allowed to meditate, because they didn't bother people who were in that section for sick people. At least that's how I remember the story, but that's strictly from memory. I don't know. Maybe you remember that similarly.
I remember that part of the story, but and that was in the book too. And I think this story that I'm retelling is from the book as well. That there were times when guards would see him and so on, and that was included in the book too.
I don't remember that particular story, but I can certainly believe it. So he was doing some kind of meditation, out of body meditation, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the book, Lance? I've seen the documentary, or yeah, the documentary before, for the benefit of all beings. Is the book? It's the biography.
It's the second edition, or the second the part two of his life story, and it's available. It has been available at Dharma Surya. I'm sure I have a copy here,
Cool.
but years ago I read, there was, the first book was his early life, and then the second book was his life in prison, and then the third, and his life after he got out of prison, and as he started, going around Tibet and re giving empowerments and teaching Dharma teachings and so on to the Tibetans. And then I think it ends when he comes to America. So the third part is going to be his work, what he's done in America and around the world since then.
Actually, you know what? This verses, this reading makes me think.
What's that?
Originally, I thought that Garchen Rinpoche's teacher was like such advanced level of practitioner that just without doing much, without like saying anything, or he attracted, well, actually what people say that it kind of fooled the guards into thinking that he's actually an old and sick person and he cannot do any work, so therefore just let him sit in the corner and be on his own. But now that I'm reading this, I come into thinking that perhaps it's on a totally different level. I think that he had so much merit and he had such level of accomplishment that even those lowly, like, prison guards, harsh prison guards, they couldn't help but treating him well. And like, what could they give him in the prison? They, of course, they couldn't give him all this like alms and food and all that. They had themselves, So what they gave him like comfort and peace of mind. That was, and I think those guards were not like totally full. Okay, I think they really felt that they were in the presence of very like highly evolved and highly accomplished being. So what they could give is just a peace for him. So let him be, do his teachings. Let him rest, in peace, peacefully, take his food. Just don't bother him.
I think in the later years you're right, but I think in the earlier years, 5 years, 10 years, being in prison and everything, he was doing those practices and so on like that. So that's when maybe some of these things were happening. But at the same time, the influence that he had in on those guards and so on, that they were, imagining this themselves to the point that they thought it was real. So.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking about Garchen Rinpoche's teacher.
Well, yes, they left him alone.
Yes,
They knew who he was, Khenpo
right.
Munsal.
I was talking about him. But
No,
then
he
later,
was.
yeah,
Yeah, you're right. From the very beginning, they knew who he was.
yeah.
And I don't know through what circumstance, but Khenpo Munsal and Garchen Rinpoche wound up in the same, building together.
Yeah. So maybe he.
And he was teaching, Khenpo Munsal was teaching other people as well. It wasn't exclusively teaching Garchen Rinpoche.
Right.
But Khenpo Rinpoche is so important because he is the holder of all the teachings of the Drikung Kagyu teachings. He's got them all memorized. And he became the authority because all the books were destroyed. So he became the authority on what it is, to of the Dharma practices and so on, all the different texts and so on, as it relates to the Drikung Kagyu.
Yeah, he was like holding like several lineages together.
He's the throne holder for the Drikung Kagyu and a holder of I don't know, of complete lineage of the Nyingma, which Khenpo Munsal came from.
Mm-hmm. I think we should continue reading this because I don't know how long is this, but maybe we should.
Well, we don't have much time tonight, so I don't want to get started on something that we couldn't finish and just leave it. So I'd rather finish a couple minutes early than start something.
Yeah, but the story continues later.
Yes, it does. Does anybody else have any other thoughts that you'd like to bring up? Any comments or questions? I mean, what does this mean to you? I got to ask Kunga because I know Kunga, is well read and a very good practitioner and a very good teacher and everything. So, being exposed to this for what I know is the first time, this whole sutra, what does this mean to you?
I think that, you can't always tell the value of something on the first reading. And, we have certain expectations in Western culture that, we read for purpose, we read for entertainment, we read for information. And sometimes these sutra texts weren't written to satisfy those needs. So I try to keep an open mind and just, I've just let it sink in and sort of let me figure out what it means later sometimes,
Do you look at it in terms of the outer meaning, the inner meaning, and the secret meaning?
I haven't been looking at it like that, but I think that is a great way to think about it. I had somebody else reading a sutra and we were talking about it and we were grappling with these problems and we were thinking about it. You could read it based on how the monks at the time who were writing it were seeing the world. You could think about their perspective on things. You could think about the perspective of the symbolism maybe of the teachings, like seeing it through the lens of the teachings. And then you could maybe just look at it as, without trying to decipher. You just appreciate it for what it is without trying to analyze things and take them under your control. And in art, there's this idea that the best art is undefinable. And once you've taken art and you put it into a category, then it dies as a piece of artwork. It has no meaning anymore once you've explained away all the symbolism. So, I think in some ways, I think of these readings are in a way, they're not meant to be explained away, because once you explain something completely, it loses its power. Thank you.
Thank you. Brendan, what would you say?
Well, I thought that was fascinating what we just heard from Kanga about how when you can explain away, it's like explaining away a joke, right? I mean, same thing, or explaining away art or music, right? You ever hear a song and the song loses some of the oomph once you know what all the lyrics are and you memorize them, versus that ambiguity the first couple of times that you hear the song. Lance, I like what you said about the secret meaning, and I think that comes back to what I was saying earlier about the question, is this real or not? Well, what does it mean to be real? I mean, maybe there's a secret meaning I'm missing, trying to interpret it too literally. So I wouldn't want to do that. I'd rather keep an open mind about it.
Well, how do you define? I said that there were three meanings. There was the outer meaning, the inner meaning, and the secret meaning. So, what does that mean to you? What does each one of those mean to you?
So the outer meaning would, well, I don't know the difference between the outer and the inner meaning. I can't imagine. I know what a secret meaning would be, though.
What would you think the secret meaning is then?
It would be something that is hidden in the text that would make sense to an initiate who has certain hidden knowledge, but to anybody else, they wouldn't, if they don't have that knowledge, they can't interpret the secret meaning.
Barney, would you like to comment on that?
Um, no, the secret meaning of the text, I don't know. It's pretty.
Well, generally, what outer meaning, inner meaning, and secret
Well,
meaning?
the outer meaning is what it says on the surface. The inner meaning, let's see, let me try to remember what the inner meaning generally is. The meaning that comes through and understanding something in the light of emptiness, I suppose, the inner meaning. So, and the secret meaning is the understanding that comes through actual enlightenment. That's probably wrong. It's been a while since I've thought of that question.
No, that's basically how I understand it. The outer meaning is just, the words, by themselves, just, not thinking too much about it. And then the inner meaning is, the scriptural meaning, the meaning that comes down from the teachings and so on, from the lamas and so on like that, but then the secret meaning is your own personal experience with it. Does it remain as an outer meaning in your life, or do you hold on to the inner meaning? It's written here in the book and this is what it must be. Or is there some personal experience that you have with it, and there's a different way of looking at it? There's a light that shines. There's a clear light that comes as a result of the experience of of what that secret meaning is when it comes alive, when the inanimate page comes alive into your life. That's how I understand it. That's my experience with it.
We use that same idea with Dharma names. Like we'll give a Dharma name to a student, we'll say it has the outer meaning, inner meaning, and a secret meaning. And the outer meaning is just what the words mean, maybe why the teacher gave you that. And then the inner meaning is what that name means to you, how you take it into your life. And the secret meaning is the meaning you discover over time as you kind of continue to develop your practice.
Okay, well, that's very good. I like that. All right, well, we'll have to leave it here. It's past 9 o'clock already. So thank you all for coming and engaging in this conversation, and we'll continue with it and see the next week. We'll see if we can. Actually, next week I'm going to have to beg out. No, we should be able to do next week. I'm going to be coming back from a wedding up in New Jersey, but I think we'll be able to manage doing it. If not, I'll have to let everybody know. All right. By the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikung Kagyu Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Bye bye.
Good night.
Thank you for discussion.
Good night.